Hi, I'm Peter Roper. It's another serving of Potluck Politics. Today's show is called Capital Ideas. You probably thought that the election was over, you didn't have to think about politics, but actually now the good part starts, the government part. And so we're going to talk about what's happening in Hartford. And we've got two great guests here who ran and won. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Christine Conley of the 40th District and Joe De La Cruz of the 41st District.
Yep.
And they actually work as a team and are well known as a team that works well together. And they look out for Groton and a little bit of New London and a little bit of Ledyard, right?
A little bit of Ledyard, yes.
So they cover an area which is southeastern Connecticut, part of it. And I think we're going to have a map shortly, but welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Maybe you could start just describing your districts and if that's a challenge or not, or how that works out for you.
So a few years ago, they redid the districts. So the 40th District currently has Groton north of 95, which has a section of Groton, a section of Mystic, and a section of Groton City, and then a little bit of Gales Ferry. In Groton, you're in the 40th District if you vote at the City Municipal Building, if you vote at Mary Morrison School, or if you vote at the School Administration Building. And in Gales Ferry, I cover the area of Route 12 from the Groton line all the way up to basically where CVS is in Gales Ferry. It's a good landmark.
Cool. And your district?
I have the 41st. It's a bit of a strange district.
You're my rep, so I know a little bit about this district.
Yep, you're in my district. So my district actually gets broken up in a funny sort of way. I'm the one guy that leaves his district for about 15 minutes before re-entering his district in New London. So I have the southern half of New London. They call it south of the hospital. A couple streets away from that, and then you can see in the map here everything along the Mystic River all the way up to 95 and across, and just where I don't go up to 95 is where we split the city, the 40 and 41st. So within them boundaries, Chris and I both can talk about the amount of diversity we have in them, and that's what I think makes us a little bit different. We can have in the scale of income and color and everything else, and certainly Chris can do that with the military, and they're different districts.
Yeah, but you evidently are doing well because you got reelected. So people evidently knew what you were doing and were willing to vote for you again. So that's good.
It is good.
It is good.
We thank everyone for supporting us again, and hope to serve them like the way we did the first 2 years.
Good. So you guys were elected initially in 2016.
Yes.
And then reelected in 2018. And I guess I'd like to hear what major things you accomplished in your freshman year, just to recap a little bit of what happened last session.
You go first.
Sure. So when we first became together in the House, we were talking about what things we were going to accomplish. And we realized pretty quickly, about 10 minutes into our session in the House, that a lot of what we were going to do was to play defense and deal with the budget situation and how much Governor Malloy's initial budget was detrimental to the towns that we represent. So that became a big priority of both of us. Groton got restored from a $17.5 million cut. Ledyard got restored from substantially from a very large cut itself. And New London, Joe's section, did pretty well in the first budget, but he still had to make sure that New London stayed getting the money that it needed as well. And then we were able to focus on a lot of good laws to help our constituents. I did an awful lot with healthcare to make sure that we codified a lot of the ACA so that folks can go to the doctors when they need to, and insurance has to cover the same. And then a lot of other laws to help our businesses. We had special laws to help the casinos expand, help Millstone, and to help the job growth at Electric Boat. So we helped our three major employers get the laws that they needed to hire and grow the economy.
And ACA, you should explain, because some people don't know what that is.
The Affordable Care Act.
There you go.
Yeah.
And your issues and
I'd say I remember the meetings that we had. It's funny because you get elected, and we actually went into her office, I believe it was, and asked, what did we just get ourselves into? It's an incredible amount of work. It's good work. But we realized, early of, how big the mountain was that we had to climb, especially with a proposed cut of a $17.5 million, especially coming from a Democratic governor. So I think that was our proudest moment. I think what folks don't realize is everyone doesn't know what Eastern Connecticut is. I think for the most part, if you're from Waterbury and you're a representative, you think New London when we first got there, most people thought that the sub-base and electric boat were the same thing. So a lot of that is being freshmen and freshmen together. We had to describe to many folks in our own caucus, what mattered to us. And oftentimes what mattered to us mattered to the rest of the state. When we showed them how much EB was spending. A lot of our job is to show people what we're doing and what we're about in this little corner. And I think that was the biggest challenge. I felt maybe, I know Chris's, the budget was obviously the biggest challenge, but getting other folks to realize who we are and what we do, to me, was one of the bigger hurdles.
Into being ambassadors for our region, which is important.
It's what it's about, really.
So this session, the first year schedule, why don't you explain how it's broken down? Because the first year you can do almost anything as far as legislation and bills and what's coming
We'll
up.
just keep going in order. I like this.
Yeah.
I like
So
it.
this year is a long session, odd year. So 2019 is an odd year. We started this in second Wednesday of January, and we are in session until the first Wednesday in June. And to start session, anyone can put in any bills that they feel are important, law changes or bonding requests to their communities or to the state as a whole. And the deadline to do that is from today, tomorrow at 5 p.m. All bills have to be in, personal bills. The committees then take the bills and decide which bills to have public hearings. Public hearings will take place starting the end of January and going through until about the end of February, middle of March. Come March time, then the committees will be moving bills out of committee to the House. Ours go to the House, but bills need to pass the House and the Senate and then be signed by the governor. So bills need to make it out of the House and the Senate by the first Wednesday in June at midnight, and we stop promptly at midnight. Someone keeps their eye on the clock and sends, they hit the gavel right when midnight occurs.
And the next session is a shorter session and more limited in scope?
Yes, it's a February till May session, and you can submit certain types of bills online as reps or senators, and then the rest of other bills you have to submit to the committee chairs, and the committee chairs choose to hear those bills.
So what do you expect from this session? What are going to be the big items? I know the budget is going to be top of the list, probably.
The budget will always be number one, but obviously tolls will be talked about. I mean, that's an obvious one.
Which is related to the budget.
Related to the budget. Recreational marijuana, I think, is going to be playing heavily. And then there's the 4,500 bills that will get submitted. I would say those two that I just mentioned would probably be the most talked about in the halls, in the rooms, because I think they seem like to be that tidal wave of something's going to happen, whatever direction that it falls, that something's going to happen this year, that we're going to get to see it on the board. I'm hopeful that we get the minimum wage to go on the board. I'm hopeful that we get paid family medical leave. Certainly those are things I'm looking to do, and and I know we all as legislators, we all have different things that we want to focus on. But I'm sure that's going to be the domination of the conversation, the tolls and medical marijuana or recreational, because states around us it's almost like it's the race to make it legal at this point. And I'm on the other side of that personally, but I think that's one of the main things we'll be talking about.
And that's related to the budget too.
It is, absolutely.
An income from that too.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that with a lot of the bills are going to be how can these grow the economy? The budget controls a lot, and how can we help our businesses, help our families, help get our economy growing in the right direction is really the conversation behind each and every bill.
And things are going to be different now because we have a new governor and a new proportion of Democrats and Republicans in the legislature, both the House and the Senate, and the governor are controlled by Democrats. So how do you think it's going to be different? Are you expecting significant change, little change?
I expect new energy. I honestly do. I think and again, Malloy took over the same time Barack Obama took over in those years where we were, I think a lot of us thought we were going to be waiting in line for bread.
I know.
I mean, the
market
crash.
We're going off the cliff, basically.
Yeah, the stock market was 8,000. So, to his credit, he had to legislate through a period of time where I think that the whole entire economy in America was was really in the hole. And being a state that, like Connecticut, we are we're a richer state, so I think we ended up hurting a little bit worse. We didn't come back as fast as other states. Some people complain about policy. I think it's just the way our system's set up. But I think speaking with Lamont, I really get this feeling that he is a guy that did it in business. And he does have some interesting ways. I mean, he's on the forefront of actually making these loans available to federal workers that are going to be stuck without money throughout the shutdown. And this is something that he initiated. So I think just that alone tells me that he's looking to make connections. And I think it's going to end up being a bipartisan issue, I would guess.
I would hope so.
Yeah, because obviously everybody wants the military families to be taken care of. And, even though the Coast Guard falls outside the military purview, we still all, I think, look at as them as our protector. And certainly, that's one thing that I look for in the way that he's approaching reaching across the aisle. If you saw his speech, he really talked about getting something solid and moving forward. But his plan that I like most was to get a budget that we can depend on. Whether we not everyone's going to like it, most people are going to hate it, but I like his approach to it. And certainly Malloy had his issues with it, but it's tough to have any kind of budget when there's no money.
I would like to see a change this year of, we all don't have to agree, but at least to be open to hear each other and be open to find solutions to our problems. I think that's something that in the first 2 years, if we didn't agree with the governor, it was very difficult to move forward. And that's what ended up resulting in the bipartisan budgets when the Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate worked together instead of working with the governor. So I'd prefer if we can all work, the House, Senate, and the governor together as a team a little better this term.
Yeah, consensus should be the goal. and you guys are both Democrats, but do you expect to be able to work with the Republicans? Are you getting a sense of what the Republicans are going to try to do this time? Are they just going to be negative? Or they have their own agenda? Or what's?
I think I always approach it as if everybody comes with a reason to come and help. There's not one person I've met. I've vehemently disagreed with a bunch of people in that room, in that hall and chamber. But in the end, when we walk away, I know that person didn't run for office to specifically hurt Connecticut. So I've always been able to reach across and look at someone, knowing that their ultimate goal is to make Connecticut better. We may disagree completely on the way to get there, but we've always been respectful with each other. I think that's what a lot of people assume when they watch Washington politics and they see people on TV saying how much we should hate each other. It's not like that in our halls. And I know, I feel like Chris had the same experience, but I've never had a Republican that I met up there that I just say, man, we could never, ever, ever. There's someone that policy-wise, absolutely. There's no way I can get on board with some of the things that they want. But as a human being, as a person, yeah, we need to reach across and find what we have in common and build off that instead of finding the two things that we know divide us and working inward. I want to start from the beginning and work outward, and that's been my experience up there, though.
I work a lot with the ranking members of the committees that I sit on the legal language of bills, and I found that even if we don't agree fully on the policy, there's generally a goal to get the bills as good as we can to solve the problems correctly and most efficiently. But it doesn't mean we all have to vote the same way, and I find that our conversations are very collegial, very respectful, and there are times where we disagree on the floor and we state our opinions on the floor, but for the most part, a lot of the nonsense that we see in Washington doesn't happen in Hartford. And I'd like to keep it that way.
Good. What national issues are affecting Connecticut? I know shutdown is huge right now, but are there other issues that you're more aware of that you sort of have to be prepared to defend? I know the healthcare issue is one that's been
healthcare is very big. I hear that from a lot of folks. Folks who talk about struggles that they have with prescriptions, struggles that they have, going to the doctor, paying for the doctor, paying for health insurance, and getting things covered. I think the longer this government shutdown happens, the worse it will have an effect on Connecticut. Just like our municipalities receive an awful lot of money from the state really receives an awful lot of money from the federal government. So we're looking at issues if the shutdown continues, issues with food stamps, issues with housing vouchers, issues with a lot of our basic social services. So I hope that the folks in Washington can get the government open as soon as possible. And then we deal with, our roads are funded substantially by the federal government. So any big projects, funds can be halted, and then we have to deal with it on our side. Again, I'm glad that we're going in Tuesday to having more state services available to the federal employees who are not getting paychecks right now. But the longer that goes, the more money, state money that's being spent, and will result in more budget issues.
I think nationally for us, and you mentioned insurance, being on the insurance committee, I've seen it. Last year we had the bill where it was the Medicare savings plan was hit, and it was folks that fell in that hole of, I used to make $2,100 a month, and now anyone that made $2,100 or less, the prescriptions were paid for if you were on Medicare by the state. It was to help them survive. And they had lowered that because of budgetary reasons down to $1,400. So a lot of people fell in that hole, and they call. I know Chris got the calls and I got them. Rep. Cruz, you basically don't know me, but I'm your constituent, and I can tell you right now I'll be dead if this goes through the way it's supposed to. My prescriptions are $1,500 a month, and I make $2,100 a month, or $2,050, because $50 could make all the difference, because that was a hard set. So when they lowered to $1,400, there were people that were just calling, and to me, the way what they're talking about, possibly cutting Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid by $1.5 trillion on the federal level. So that national movement, to me, and that's where I think people need to really reach out to the federal delegations. We, fortunately, in this state, have an unbelievable delegation.
Got some good representation.
We do. That will not support any of those cuts. And but nationally, it's going to matter, because if they have enough votes to do it, and I don't think they would now, certainly not in the House, but those are the types of moves we make. And being in the insurance committee, and like you meant, the ACA, Affordable Care Act, we want to pass. We've been accused of just passing laws the last two sessions that didn't need to be passed. Why would you pass a law that's already a federal law? The ACA is a federal law, and we follow that. Why would you do that? Well, now we're finding out why you do that as an individual state, because there's folks that have pre-existing conditions now that are kind of nervous right now, because they're talking about getting rid of that ACA totally, and believe me, it's affected all of our families. So if you fall outside that inside that pre-existing condition, and we don't codify those protections in the law at Connecticut, then you'll be like anybody else around the country, stuck without insurance. So that's where I think nationally we really need that we could be extremely affected.
Yeah, it all comes downhill.
It does.
You mentioned constituents. Tell me a little bit more about constituent contact and how much you hear from your constituents.
I hear from a lot of folks quite often. I, of course, don't hear from everyone. So the best way that we tend to get from folks can email us or call us. Our emails at the Capitol are all kind of the same. It's your first name, last name at cga.ct.gov. And you can call the general number at the Capitol. Folks stop us on wherever we happen to be if they have something that's pertinent to them. So we hear from folks often. I think my demographic is actually a little different than Joe's age-wise, because I have the Navy base. I have a younger demographic. And I don't always hear from the younger folks or the Navy families as much as I would expect from the amount of folks in my district. So a lot of folks, when I campaign and talk to folks in the door, let them know, even though you might only be here for a year or two, we're here, I'm here to help you, to represent you, and please reach out whenever you need help from the state.
And I know you guys work hard to get elected, but how hard do you work once you're elected to reach out to your constituents, going the other way, to try to get a hold of them and let them know who you are?
Well, we actually just held a town hall style meeting, which was attended to about 25 people, which really speaks to the engagement in our country right now, because if someone that did 9 local budgets before I went to Hartford, unless there was something really, really pressing, the town council, there were 9 town councilors, and maybe 13 people in the meeting, because there were some town employees that had to report. Now you're not seeing that anymore. The engagement that I think we got from that one meeting, to talk to 25 people and to give them feedback on tolls, on medical marijuana, on bills that mean stuff to them, and to have a constituent that night talk to Chris about a bill that she thought, other states do so much better. And I said, a lot of times we do learn that, but we don't know it and she happened to be in the medical field, is how she knew it. Something simple that she's working with Chris now that may end up becoming a bill possible. Who knows what happens with it? But those little conversations with constituents, a lot of times, are the things that end up changing law, because it's the people turning the wrench. Like I say, it's the person that's on the ground working that usually has the best ideas on how to fix something. And I really, don't worry about stopping me in the street, by the way. People say, oh my God, you're shocking.
I don't want to bother you,
I
but feel free and bother us.
That's what we're there for.
Is there a way to track legislation, keep track of what's going on without contacting you, or is there a website, or is
Yes,
it
so
possible to?
cga.ct.gov is actually a really good website. You can type in bills.
Say that again slowly.
cga.ct.gov.
Okay, thank you.
You can see the calendars on the front of the page that lets you know what committees are meeting and when we'll be in session. We check that one often.
Yeah.
Because that's how we find out when we'll be in session first, is just on the general web page. Then you can look at your representatives, see what bills we've put in, and you can search bills by topic, or if you know the bill number, you can put the number in on the website. Once you've found a bill that you're interested in, you can click Track My Bill, and you get emails as the bill moves through committee and is up for vote. And you can always let us know, or let our assistants know, or let the committees know if you're interested in a bill, and the staff does their best to let folks know what's happening with important bills.
Do you guys have a lot of interaction with local governments that you're kind of representing?
Oh, we do. I mean,
I know you were on the council, and you've
Yeah.
been involved locally for a while. So.
Yes.
I think we were connected before we left, both of us. It's not like we're two people that ran and didn't have a connection to RTM, to council.
Yeah.
What's striking to me is the relationship that the New London mayor, and on the other hand, is an elected mayor. So a lot of the things will come through him if there's bills, legislation. And I think we work with town manager and the entire council on the Groton side,
Yeah.
which is a little bit different dynamic because it's a direct call from a mayor, from an elected mayor from town,
Yeah.
from a city. And it's a different play. It's funny because I do feel like I'm in the wishbone position. You have virtually a city, the city center for our area in one town that I represent, and then almost like, I don't want to say suburban either, because I feel like
Groton's pretty diverse. There's a lot going on in
very
Groton.
diverse. So
It's a lot of little towns.
yeah, they're
in
reflective
some
of
ways.
each other in a lot of different ways. They really are. So that's, but that we do work with all of them, and believe me, when we were cut by $17.5 million, Chris and I both received phone calls from the Groton superintendent on the way home, which is good, which is what you want.
Yes, yeah. With Ledyard also has an elected mayor, so that is similar to New London. I get most of my communication from the mayor and not necessarily from the individual council members or a town manager. But I'd say both my superintendents call me regularly, let me know what's going on in the schools, what they need for the school systems, as does the rest of the local government.
And you both have jobs besides this, right? I mean, you're not in session all the time, although it probably seems like it sometimes, but
We're at work all the time.
But you're
We work somewhere all the time.
Yeah, so we tried to figure out. I mean, that was probably the most shocking part. I think and again, it's not like we thought it was going to be a walk in the park, but I think always being involved with council and RTM, I did assume a lot of the action was going to happen after 4 o'clock. I just thought we'd be in Hartford. I thought we were going to work, go to Hartford, be in Hartford till 1 o'clock in the morning. I was fine signing up for all that stuff, but 99% of the business in Hartford happens at 8 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 8 in the morning too. And it's been difficult, but it's been worth it, and if the guy that I work with at work is listening to this program, he's probably going to tell you no, because we both actually work in small businesses, and so we get to lean on each other and talk about how, the problem that, walking out the door knowing that you're leaving the small business and small company behind for the day when they really, really need you. That's been the challenge. There's no doubt about it, but it's been worth it.
Yeah, it's always a juggle, but it's a good juggle in the end. We're both able, our first 2 years, to accomplish a lot in Hartford and a lot back home in our jobs and with our families. So I think we'll continue to do that this term.
Yeah.
Well, we're winding down here, but I just want to throw out a couple of issues that I'm interested in, and you can respond or not, but climate change is important, and is there anything happening that you know of?
I'm a believer, and I think
Good. That's a good start.
Connecticut is on the forefront. I think we are a state that, as a legislature, I think believes and has shown that, and is working. Lamont is actually talking about reaching across and working with businesses on that because, let's face it,
It will be an economic issue.
It absolutely
It is already, but it's going to be
if
more.
the train tracks are underwater, then we have no rail line. So, and that's been something that I think most folks that I talk to in the legislature on both sides,
believe it or not. It's not, this to me is not as partisan. I mean, maybe some of the restrictions that we're seeing Washington walk away from, and pollution and carbon footprint are disappointing. But I think we're being very well represented in Hartford.
And there are several bills on plastic bags that have already been filed. There were bills on a surcharge and one that I filed, and bills on a ban. So that will be, and the committee's going to take that issue up. So something will continue on with environmental
And hopefully
issues.
clean energy, wind, some of those things are going to get more.
We put in a wind
more-
bill
Yes.
right now. It should be filed
Good.
Yep.
by our staff.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
Wind bill from a politician. That's great.
Yeah.
The other thing, the national popular vote did pass, but I guess there's a push now for early voting in Connecticut. Is there any chance that that's going to get?
There were a lot of bills filed already on that.
Yeah.
Denise
Well,
Merrill.
I think there are like 11 states that don't have early voting.
We're
and
one of
them.
13
Oh, 13?
states without early voting. So Denise Merrill put in a bill, I put in a bill, and a lot of my colleagues put in a bill about early voting. So that should be taken up by Elections Committee this year.
Okay. My last item, which we don't even have to talk about, is scam telephone calls. I mean, I'm getting them on my cell phone at home, and I don't know what can be done, but it seems like someone needs to start addressing that because
It seems like
it's
every
gonna-
time
it's
we
gonna-
write a
it's-
bill, they find a loophole.
yeah.
It's going to be education.
It's really annoying.
It really is. It's like everything's going to be education. I get scammed 3 or 4 times a day at my job, and sometimes you fall for one. But I think that the advice I give to people is assume it's a scam first. Even if it's your mom calling.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That way,
Well,
but
the numbers come up. You
it's a
don't know
scam.
where they're coming from.
Yeah, and the best way I tell people is Google the phone number that just called you, or Google the website, because that usually will tell you. Because a lot of folks want to be pleasing to the person on the phone, but just hang up with them. Google the phone number, and if it says scam, then just tell
When
them
in
it's a scam.
doubt, let it go to voicemail. If
Yeah.
it was important, they'll leave a message and give them a call
Right.
back.
Yep,
Well, we're wrapping this up. That was a quick half hour, like I promised.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
Representative Christine Conley and Joe Dela Cruz. Appreciate
you.
both
Thank
of you
you for your
coming.
time.
It's nice of you to come, and we're going to try to do this again. So maybe during the session, but probably at the end of the session at least. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our viewers. We know a lot of you already know these guys, but we want you to keep track of them and help them and give them work to do if you can. I'm Peter Roper. It's been another edition of Potluck Politics. Remember to pay attention and be well. Health is a good thing.